traffic defense attorney in Manassas, Virginia. Welcome to my weekly Facebook Live. Today is our local business spotlight. Today I am joined by a very special guest, John Neral of John Neral Coaching. John's going to be talking to us today about the entrepreneurial journey and pivoting during COVID, but also just pivoting in general. And I just wanted to tell everybody really quick how I first met John. In the beginning of all the shutdowns, when Zoom became very popular, I logged on to a Central Fairfax Chamber of Commerce event where John was doing a presentation basically about his new book. And then I reached out to John and we connected on LinkedIn and Facebook. And then I've seen him at some other events. And then we just started talking, and we're working on kind of a virtual book tour together. We're just collaborating in a bunch of different ways. And in all my conversations with John, I thought he would be a really great guest to talk to everybody because he has so much useful information for small business owners. And I think particularly during this time, talking about pivoting is very important. And there are probably points that could apply whether it's now or any time in business. So with that, John, I'm going to hand it over to you. You want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just start going with the conversation.
Yeah, Jean, thanks so much. And as I'm listening to that, and I'm like, gosh, I can't believe we've only known each other for a few months, because it seems like we've known each other for far longer than that. But you hit the nail on the head with that. Exactly. Yeah. So thank you. So in my business, I help professionals who are ambitious about their careers show up to make the impact they want. And the whole premise behind how we show up is really how we connect and the energy that we bring to not only our businesses, our work sites, but also to the people we work with, more importantly, each and every day, whether they be our colleagues or our team members. And so through coaching, what I do is I help clients really tap into what it means for them specifically to show up and where they get to align their work with both their values and their personal mission. So that ultimately at the end of the day, they wake up and they at the end of the day, as they get to start their next day, they're waking up and they're saying, I get to go to work instead of I have to go to work.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's very important because if you are not happy at your job, that translates to every other aspect of your life. And
well said, absolutely.
We've all had jobs like that. I am
sure. I put tents up one summer for a party rental company when I was in college. And it was, I mean, imagine working out in heat like this and putting up these big party tents for hundreds of people. And my dad made a bet with me and he said, you aren't going to make it until the end of the week. And I said, nope, absolutely. I am in this. I'm absolutely going to make it till the end of the week. And like on day 2, I hated that job. I hated it. I didn't like the work. There was nothing about it that I can honestly say I enjoyed at the time. I look back on and I'm like, okay, I learned from that whole experience. Mm-hmm. But I literally got to that Friday. And when I went home for the weekend, I said to myself, I am so quitting this job Monday morning. And I walked in, I went into my boss and I said, hey, I'm really not enjoying this. I'm going to give you my 2 weeks notice. I'm going to quit. This just isn't for me. And he goes, let's just make today your last day because you're really awful at this. And I went, great. And I went home. And my dad was like, I told you you wouldn't make it a week. I go, I made it 6 days.
Exactly. You purposely waited until Monday, right? So you could prove him wrong.
Exactly. That was exactly it. So yeah, it's no fun working at a job you don't like.
I would tell a story too, but I have too many Facebook friends that could be watching this that I may have interacted with in one of the many jobs that I have had growing up in Fairfax. I've worked almost everywhere, so I'm just not going to add anything.
Sure, that's okay. That's all right.
So you guys can think what you want. But I also wanted to say, I wanted to give a couple shout outs. Thank you, Marvin Powell, for joining us. Marvin, you are the absolute best. And Sarah White, thank you so much for checking out my lives lately. And they also had things to say about, I don't know, John, if you can see the comments, but Marvin said that John Neral Coaching is super awesome. And Sarah White said that John is the best.
Oh, thank you. I just clicked on the link. Hey, Marvin. Hey, Sarah. Good to see you both. Thanks so much.
So I also wanted to say, if you guys could let us know where you are checking in from. I am in Centerville right now. John, where are you?
So Vienna.
So anybody that's watching, tell us where you're checking in from. And then also feel free to write a question in the comments or a comment, and we will try to get to it while we're doing the presentation today. And just a quick note about pivoting and everything, John. Because of pivoting, John and I are actually able to do this because of all the changes that have been made or that we are making during COVID. And things like Zoom and all these different programs existed before, but frankly, I never used them. So it's really awesome that Marvin says Centerville rocks.
Centerville rocks.
That we are, able to do these presentations where, ordinarily we wouldn't be able to do that. You being in Vienna, me being in Centerville, somebody'd have to travel. And, we frankly probably wouldn't have even connected at all if it wasn't for pivoting. But anyway, I'm no expert. So John, why don't you start talking about pivoting?
Yeah. So I firmly believe, Jean, that there is power in the pivot. And what pivoting does is it allows us to get out of our comfort zone and do something completely different. And on my website, in my blog, there's a blog post there called The Power in the Pivot. And a couple years ago, my husband and my best friend from college, we ended up we called it our Western adventure. And we ended up in Yellowstone, and we went to go check in. The power was out. And so here you are in this magnificent park, and there's no power. And people are trying to check into their rooms, and they're like, but I have dinner reservations at 5:30. And they're like, we have no power. Like, we can't cook you a hot meal. Like, there's just not going to happen. And people were getting so frustrated and so upset by that. And for the three of us, for Richard, for Vicky and me, we were like, okay, so how are we going to make the best out of this? And so we found this cafeteria that happened to be open, and we grabbed a couple of sandwiches, and we took a walk, and we did a drive and all those kind of things. And we ended up calling it an early night. And the power didn't come on that night till like 10:30, 11 o'clock. And we thought, how much did we get to experience by not getting bogged down in dinner reservations and everything else? And we just took advantage of being in Yellowstone for a night, right? And because we were able to pivot, we got to experience something that we wouldn't necessarily had gotten to had the circumstance been different, right? So in pivoting, we pivot because of a circumstance. And while COVID has certainly been traumatic and horrific and upsetting on every single level. And I know for me personally, we lost a dear friend to COVID back at the end of March, and it kind of, rattles you a little bit, and you go, okay, this is really real right now. But what COVID did was it got us all off of the hamster wheel. And we really had a chance to sit and go, okay, so what's important? And people have been taking time to think about their personal lives, their professional lives, what they want to do right now, and whether or not what they're doing professionally really aligns with their goals. So this whole opportunity with COVID is really nothing more than a circumstance at its bottom level, right? It's a circumstance that has happened to us that creates a thought, that in turn creates a feeling, which in turn creates an action, which drives a result. So as a business owner, I could look at COVID and I could say, COVID has completely destroyed my business. I can't meet with clients in person anymore. And so now my thought is that, I'm a failure. I can't make this business work. And with that kind of mindset, the actions that I take at that point are really defeatist or defeating. And so it doesn't mean I get any clients at that point. Or on a complete opposite end of that spectrum, right? I could look at this and go, okay, so the world got turned on its ear. I need to figure this out. What am I going to figure it out? The thought may be, so where's the opportunity for me in this moment? Right? And that opportunity is, what do I get to learn? Right? And the feeling might be around being optimistic. It might be around being entrepreneurial. It might be around just being like, I'm going to accept the situation in front of me and I'm going to move on. And then that creates an action which drives a result. So COVID and pivoting really kind of opened up our mindset in a lot of ways. And I know even for me as a business owner, while most of my work was pretty much virtual anyway, there were certainly a few pivots I had to do too.
So, if most of your work was virtual before, what were some pivots that you had to do, if you can share any of those?
Yeah. So what's interesting about living in this area pre-COVID was that traffic is a mess, right? You know this extremely well. And so being able to meet people in person um obviously took a little bit more time out of the day. There is nothing better than sitting down with a cup of coffee or having lunch with somebody and being able to have a conversation and being able to network and connect and all those kind of things, but it also takes time. And so as I started to see my business grow, it just became easier for me where I would meet my clients. Most of my clients I see over Zoom, but sometimes a phone call is better. But if they were local, we might meet maybe for the first session and the last session, something like that. For me, though, the pivot was that I had spent so much time leading up to this year kind of planning a book tour, right? And so my book, which is Show Up: 6 Strategies to Lead a More Energetic and Impactful Career, it was about where was I going to go and speak and how many people were I going to be able to speak in front of. And there were local events. And as I was traveling for work, I was trying to piggyback on events there. And then COVID comes along and all of a sudden it's now like, okay, so an in-person event right now is not possible. I was working with Jennifer on a book signing party with the chamber, and of course that just doesn't happen right now. So, it was about looking at these kind of virtual book events that you and I've talked a little bit about and going, how do I make them work in a virtual platform? How do I partner with a college, a company, an organization, a chamber, whoever that may be, and deliver something that is of quality and of meaning and value to a group virtually when we all can't be in the same room? And so that was a huge pivot for me, both in terms of a business model, but more importantly, about a mindset. What I learned is that I'm pretty good staring at that camera and doing a workshop or something like that. It's not my ideal, believe me. I can't wait to be in front of people, but I've definitely gotten a little bit better at it.
It is so hard for me because I'm looking at it and I'm trying to see out of the corner of my eye if I'm looking at it, and I'm very conscious about it. But anyway, we can just breeze past that. Hopefully, I'm looking at all of you in the eye right now. But Sarah actually asked a question. She said, "What has been your?" Well, I assume this is to you. What has been your most surprising success in pivoting?
The most surprising success in pivoting. Yeah, I would say that when I started my business back in January of 18 full time, I certainly had a thought about these were the clients I was going to work with and these were the things I was going to talk about. And it was great having that kind of plan. But honestly, the biggest success in all of that has really been about listening to what's been going on, and the conversations that I've had with organization and individuals in either be it a coaching consult or a coaching conversation has been around how we've pivoted around COVID, and being able to have the conversation around what it has been like to navigate in this pandemic, both personally and professionally, and listening to people who are saying things like, I know I'm capable of more, or I'm feeling unfulfilled, or had this never happened, I wouldn't have been considering a job change, or I wouldn't have been considering leaving my job and going to do something completely different, whatever that may be. And so for me, the biggest pivot was to get out of the lane I was in and really paying attention to more of what was going on around us in the world and organizationally how it was impacting companies, and say, I've got an opportunity to lend my voice to these situations in an opportunity to help people, and to help people in a way that I hadn't necessarily thought about. Because if you told me I would have been coaching people around dealing in a pandemic, that wasn't even anything near my business plan. But it is something that has obviously found an important place in right now because of the pivot.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any advice that you could give to people? I know we've been going through this, we, society, the world, for a few months now, and people have probably figured some stuff out, but at the same time, things are constantly changing, and we're in Virginia, and anybody who's watching this that's not in Virginia, other states are starting to shut down again. So, people may have had plans. I mean, nothing is definite, right? I mean, we may have found ways to adapt and acclimate, but this is definitely not over. So, do you just have any advice for anyone out there about, who might be wondering what they can do or what they should be doing to maybe prepare for another shutdown or something like that?
So I think we're, I mean, we, in some ways, we're kind of at the mercy of how this pandemic kind of progresses, right? So I know for me individually, if I'm going to the mall, if I'm going to the supermarket, no one's going to the mall. If I'm going to the supermarket, or I'm going out to, remember when we used to go to the mall?
Yeah.
Right? Now I just call Amazon and it arrives at the door.
Yeah.
But like if I go to the supermarket, if I'm running an errand, something like that, for me, the ground rule is I wear my mask. And that's just something I do for others and for myself. But in terms of pivoting in right now what's going on, what I can do is I'm going to share with you 3 questions that come from one of my favorite books. It's called With Winning in Mind by Lanny Basham. And Lanny is a 2-time Olympic medalist, 1 silver, 1 gold, in the 50-meter mixed combined shooting event. And it's I think it is the only Olympic sport where men and women compete alongside of each other in the same event. At least in the 70s, I think that was true. And when Lanny got the silver medal in 72, he basically said, I'm not done. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get a gold medal in 76. And so he developed something called a mental management system. And in my side career, if you will, as a professional bowler, I've actually worked with Lanny's daughter on my mental games. So there's that point of reference from like athlete to athlete. But the 3 questions that he developed after every training, after every event, he would always take time to journal and reflect on, 1, what did he do well today? So my question is, what did we do well today? Right? As we're thinking about the work that we're doing and how we're dealing with this whole situation, what are we doing well right now? Question 2 was, what did I learn? Right? So when we adopt a learner's mindset, we're able to get really clear about, what were things that we discovered or we learned today because of how we competed, how we worked, how we showed up, whatever that might be. And then the third question is, what do we need to work on? And in those 3 questions, as I've worked with my clients on those questions as well, that's partly where the power and the pivot comes in, right? Because if something isn't working, we're always looking for a solution. We're always looking to figure out something better. If you are a client-focused business and you are not getting leads, or you are not getting consults, or you're not having conversations, what do you need to do differently? What do you need to work on to make that kind of pivot so you can absolutely find the people whom you can serve the most? Right? And so when we think about, what did I learn? What do I need? What did I do well? What did I learn? What do I need to work on? We then really give ourselves a chance to pause and figure out what action steps we want to take from that. And that's what allows us to pivot. If something isn't working, we pivot. Einstein said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? So if it's not working, you need to do something different, right? And so what does that look like? That's where the opportunity is in these kind of moments to really pivot and figure out exactly what action steps you want to take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. So Einstein said insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
So
right.
If you're not happy with whatever it is, personal life, professional, and you don't make changes, nothing is going to happen. So,
right. I mean, a little fun anecdote about Lanny. So Lanny won the gold medal in the Olympics in '76, but when he won, he actually tied, and her name is Margaret, and I forget her last name. I need to be better with that. But the way that the scoring system was set up, and I don't know a lot about this event to know the intricacies of it, even though they had tied point wise, the judges ruled that he got the gold and she got the silver. And he went to the judges and pleaded with them to say, can't we both get the gold medal? And they said no. So when they played the national anthem, he reached down to her and she gave him her hand, and he pulled her up on the gold medal podium with him. I always thought that was a class act. Yeah.
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 Well, I thought it was really interesting what you just said. So in ordering, because you talked about the mindset, right? So there's a situation, and then you get a feeling, and then you react to the feeling, and then you take action, right? So you mentioned the 3 steps in order to pivot, or that, proceed pivoting, I guess. So the first thing is one thing that you did well today.
Right.
And then the other thing is
what did you learn?
What did you learn? And what was the third thing?
What do you need to work on?
What do you need to work on? Of course, that should be the obvious one. What did you do well? What did you do well? What did you learn? And what do you need to work on?
Yeah.
So I am going to suggest to the people who are still watching this, or anybody that started watching this, if you could throw in 3 things that you want to share about something you did well today, something that you learned and what you could work on, or if you don't want to share one of them, that's fine too. Yeah. But I'll share, I guess, but I'll let John go first. John, if you want to. By the way, guys, this was very informal and we didn't really talk too much about how this was going to go. So John does not know that I was going to ask him that question.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. And I like this. Like I said, I feel like you and I've known each other for years. So this just makes it easy.
3 months, April, May. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Months. Right. All right. So what did I do well today? Well, I know that I coached my clients today really hard and really well to move them forward. So that was one thing. That's something I always make it a point to honor every day. What did I learn? What I learned today was that I need to be a little more aware is not the right word. I need to be a little more engaged with some things on social media that I've missed over the last couple of days and that my coach reminded me of. She's like, you have a few messages you need to go back and respond to. I was like, okay, all right. And then what do I need to work on? So one of the things that I've just really been focusing right now is just to find more ways to connect with people and to have conversations. And, whether they be through events like we're doing today or hosting a webinar or a workshop, an Instagram live or anything like that, just finding more ways to connect and to reach people is something that I am continually focusing and working on, not only for just business development, but also to really kind of honor the values that I have for me and my business.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Sounds a little more impressive than what I was going to say.
There is no judgment.
I know, and there's no wrong answers because it was my question, right? So
okay. Hey, if we want to talk about the Quarren 15 that I've gained, right? So what I did well today was I didn't put 2 big sticks of butter into the pasta I made for lunch. How about that? And trying to work off of that. So yeah.
Wow, I have never put butter in pasta ever. But
Oh
I
my
guess
gosh, it is the best thing ever. A little butter and garlic. Oh, it is comfort food. Let me tell you. Gene, you have to trust me on this one. A little bit of butter and a little
I
bit of
trust him
garlic on
with
your pasta.
nothing else. I will trust him that butter needs to go with pasta and garlic. And I have all 3 of those ingredients.
Okay.
Do that later.
I expect a full report. Okay.
I'm getting a lot of homework after these lives. So last week I had Emmy Cross and I told her that I'd look at her YouTube video and I would do the workout.
Oh,
I haven't done it yet. I've just told the whole world, but I swear I will.
yeah.
So the things that, and based on what you said, I actually got some other ideas because the things that I were going to say were kind of boring. But what's one thing that I did well today? I'm actually going to say 2 because I'm usually not very positive. One thing that I did well is I got several blog posts done, and Marvin, you mentioned that, so that gave me the idea for that. But I actually did get some blog posts done. Something that I learned is there are a lot of changes to laws in the Commonwealth that took effect on July 1st. So I was able to, and there's actually a lot of misinformation about those, which is I'm doing a presentation on Friday with the Central Fairfax Chamber of Commerce about the new laws. So today I was able to figure all of that out. And I know that might sound kind of boring, but when laws change on the 1st of July and then the code's not updated right away, it's confusing, and I need to be able to tell people the right thing, obviously. So I did learn that. And then something I need to work on, what you said, I think is something I need to get better about, maintaining my connections and connecting with people. And then I also think I need to get better about time management. I'm not going to start talking about that because I'll just go all day because I have no conception of how to manage my time. But it's something that I'm always struggling with. And I think every day I get a little bit better about it, but that's something that I know I need to work on. And I did want to add one more thing though, about something that I did well. And you mentioned the quarantine 15. Ever since the shutdown started, I was actually sick in the beginning of this for about, 2 weeks. But pretty much after that, I have worked out every single day. I did not miss one day, and I did not go to the gym. I didn't leave my house. And I know people are like, oh, shut up. They don't want to hear that. But I thought it was going to be really hard not going to the gym, not going to classes, not going to the gym here at home, in my development with the machines and everything. How am I going to get cardio? How am I going to run? If it's cold, if it's raining. And then I just found that there were so many workouts online and so much free stuff. So I got in the habit of doing that, and I really did stick with it. And it was hard at first to stick with the routine, but I did eventually get back into my normal routine of, working out before work hours started and everything to try to keep my day on track. Cause otherwise, if I didn't, I just need to be in a routine. So I was very proud of myself that I was able to do that. And obviously physically and mentally with, everything going on, I think it's been a huge help. And it's also, I found out about so many more ways that I could, you could do virtually any workout at home, free or paid. So sorry, I went off on a tangent about that, but I just am really excited that I can do that from home and I don't need to actually leave my house at all. So
kudos to you. That's awesome. Good for you. Yeah. I mean, that's impressive with everything going on and work being as busy as it has been for you to just kind of honor that commitment every day. Good for you. Nice.
Well, it is really hard, but it also goes, I think, to what you're talking about. I mean, we don't have time, or with things changing, the things that we used to spend a lot of time on, we're not, and spending time on other things. You just have to make time. And I think that applies to business as well as that. If you want to do something, you will find a way to find time to make it get done. Like with, meeting your clients, you can't do it in person. So what are you going to do? Are you going to not meet them for 4, 5, 6 months? Or are you going to, find a way to do it a different way?
Find a way. Absolutely.
Like working out at home instead of going to the gym. I mean, that's a perfect example.
Mm-hmm. That's the huge pivot. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought it would be, really hard, but like pivoting with anything, I mean, it's different. Nobody likes change, right? So it's hard to get used to it. But
Nice.
since people wrote in the comments,
Yeah, let's see what we got.
sharing it. So Marvin Powell, something that he did well today, a few brilliant coaching calls.
Calls. Nice. No
Um,
doubt.
something he learned, started 2 new blog articles for LinkedIn.
Oh, nice.
Or, well, that can fit 1 or 2. And I think he's just listing
Yeah.
things he did well today. Okay. Great lunch with the wife. Okay, awesome. Marvin had a very good day.
You had a busy day. Absolutely.
Sarah White, I took care of something I needed to in a mature and thoughtful manner. That's good. I learned that I need to work on my personal brand. Oh, that's another thing I need to add to my list. I need to learn my strengths and harnessing them. Well, Sarah, I barely know you at all, but I already know that you have a lot of strengths. So I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry too much. Maybe John knows you more than I know you. But that's good, guys. This was a good thinking.
Yeah. No, what? Thanks for sharing that, everybody. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I thought I had coming in. Okay.
I think we're
So in terms of pivoting, I mean, like we just gave some personal examples, but is there anything else that Marvin said something else. I learned what real advocacy is all about. Oh, I got it, Marvin. You didn't need to correct the typo. Any advice? I mean, because this time is really hard, and I mean, it's easy to look back and say, "Oh, yeah, it was great that I did this and that," but like going through it, it's really difficult, and some people are, affected more than others. So, just are there any, sort of words of wisdom you can give people, whether they are, entrepreneurs or just, I mean, this is about entrepreneurs pivoting, but just pivoting in general, because, I mean, just everybody's just affected so differently.
So as much as there's power in the pivot, the pivot is what allows us to change. And when we're able to change, some pretty great things can happen. So what I would say is that, Jean, if we take a look back to the middle of March, when all this started happening, and we all got sent home, right? Even though we worked at home, we still got sent home because businesses were shutting down or closing, and all of our day-to-day activities were drastically changing. And I think it's fair to acknowledge that we all kind of, or most of us maybe, just thought that this was going to last for a couple of weeks, and we were going to have some fun for a couple of weeks, just chilling out at home, and then life was going to, quote unquote, go back to normal. And what we find 3 months later is that not only have things not, quote unquote, gone back to normal, they're not going to, right? There's what COVID has done in terms of the way that we do business and the way that we work is really one of the biggest pivots we are going to see, maybe in our lifetime, in a decade, who knows? Right. I mean, even thinking about how we order out food has changed. Right. I mean, now the pizza comes to the house and it's sitting on a cardboard, placemat, if you will. And there's contactless delivery and it's all those kind of things where we just didn't really think about those kind of things at the beginning of the year. And so what I would say is that we're getting a lot of really good data right now about how we're individually handling COVID, how our businesses are handling and reacting to COVID, and figuring out exactly what's going to be next. And so in that, there's the pivot. There's the change that is in front of all of us in whatever degree or capacity there is. And so it's a great opportunity to really make this time not for naught, that we really come out of this. And I love, there's a hashtag called Build Back Better that really resonated in environmental causes and ecological changes and things like that. But some people have taken it and embraced it in terms of how we individually, we as a country, we as a world, we as businesses, how we get to build back better, or we build it back better. And that's because of how we pivot. That's because of how we pivot and what we learn right now in this moment. And so it's about keeping your eyes wide open and your ears open and really feeling out how intentionally you want to show up in these moments to make the impact you want because of how you choose to pivot. And once you decide on that, to go forward with all the execution and action steps that you have moving forward.
That is a really good point, and that is probably why your first presentation that I saw resonated so much, because you're talking about showing up, and John's book is called Show Up, and it's about showing up. But I'll let you talk about the book, John. But obviously, the book was not written with COVID in mind. It was written before COVID. But the points that you mentioned in showing up and in your presentations about the book are very relevant to now. I mean, they're evergreen content, which is one new term that I learned lately in all my social media research during this time. But yeah, I mean, showing up. So I want to actually ask you if you could explain a little bit more about what that means. But for you personally, showing up, you mentioned the book tour, right? You had these live events scheduled, but you had to change those. How were you going to show up in front of people? Same thing with me. I just recently wrote a book too. And by the way, guys, we'll put the links to the Amazon books in the comments so you can go and look for them. But yeah, I actually, my book was published after John's, and I had one live event that was scheduled, and that was March 20th, something like that. So that was obviously canceled. So I was kind of bummed. I'm like, what am I going to do? So yeah, I was trying to figure out how to do these things online, and how to stay in front of people, because if you're not going outside, you're not going to events, no one's going to know you're there. They'll all forget about you. So if you could just, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about your book and how what you talk about in your book can help them, through pivoting or just in general.
Yeah. So when I made the decision to write the book, it really came out of what I was having a lot of conversations with people, and I kept hearing, I need to show up, or my clients would talk about, I feel like I need to show up differently. And it got me really curious and like, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? And for me, it was something which I had not only been saying or talking about, but it was something which in my own personal and professional life was something I was expected to do. I was expected to show up. And in growing up in my family, we had certain rules and we had certain guidelines, and that was how I was supposed to show up. And you start working in different places, and there's these expectations that are there. And the pain point that I was seeing with my clients was that they had this idea or thought about what it meant to show up, but they couldn't really clearly define it. And so I think back to the days when I hired staff and interviewed a lot of people, and they'd come in and they'd go, you need to hire me because I'm a team player. And my first question was, how do you play on a team? Because I'm not so sure you play on a team the same way I do, and we need to get really clear about that. So it was one thing to kind of throw out the term. It was another one to really define it. And so as I thought back to my own life and the work that I was doing with my clients, the Show Up 6 strategies just kind of evolved. And so the strategies are about setting ground rules and having intentional conversations, owning where you are and welcoming new opportunities, and using your genius and protecting and promoting your brand. And those strategies get paralleled in the book between a very personal autobiographical account of how Show Up has played very prominently in my life in the first part of the book. And the second part of the book is the more tactical and strategical ways in which the Show Up 6 strategies can impact you in your career, and what it may look like to bring them either into your organization or even just into your own thoughts about your own professional development and how you choose to define to show up. And so on this show up mission, if you will, the goal is that when we say show up, we get a really clear idea about one, if not all six of those strategies in terms of how you decide to navigate different situations, to really move yourself and move relationships forward in that way.
So what would you say is the first step in determining how you're going to show up?
Yeah, first step, hands down, is the O, which is own where you are. So it's about taking a really honest and hard look at yourself. Whether you choose to do it in a mirror and have a conversation one-on-one, or you decide to sit and journal and meditate, or whatever it is, but it's about being really truthful and honest. And we go back to Lanny's questions about what am I doing well, and what do I need, what am I learning, and what do I need to work on, and using those to take a really good assessment about where you're at. I will tell you that when I work with people who are particularly, when I work with people who are particularly interested in an internal promotion, and they've been passed over, or they haven't made the progress that they thought they would, oftentimes there's a lot of speculation on their part as to why they didn't get promoted. And so when we show up and own where we are, it's about taking a really hard look at what you're doing well and what you need to work on. And oftentimes it's about pulling people into a conversation to get the feedback you need. It's not the feedback you want. It's the feedback you need. And I chronicle a very prominent situation in my career where I walked into my VP's office and I had a heart-to-heart with her about where I was going in the organization, because as I saw it, at best, I was horizontal. And I just went through everything that I was seeing, and I trusted her enough to get her feedback on that, and to own where I was to come from a place that whatever she said to me, I was open to receive it. Because what I said to her was that the first thing I'm going to say to you is thank you. And when she told me and she confirmed exactly what I had thought, and I had that information in front of me, I knew what to do with it. I knew what to do with it at that point. Because when you're told you do good work, but you're not getting promoted, we like you, but you're not getting a raise. And yeah, you are kind of stuck on an organizational island because we're not really sure what else to do with you. So you can hang out there, that's fine, but that's where you're stuck. And when you want something more and you own where you are and you go, I can do a whole lot more outside than I can in here, it helps you make some decisions and make some decisions for me moving forward. And so that to me is the first step. We have to own where we are in order to show up fully and authentically.
Now, when you say own where you are, what does that really mean? Because I'm just trying to think of this personally for me, and I think own where I am. I don't know how to answer that if you would ask me to answer that. So, and I'm sure that the answer to that question might help other people. So what does that really mean?
Right. So if we were to really kind of look into, owning where you are, right? If we were to say, look at your business, okay, it would be going, how's your client load? Right. And how many more clients could you take on? Right. And people will say, oh, I'm really, really busy. And then the next thing you know, they find out that they're working at, 40% capacity. Right. So it's things like that. It's things about, saying, you talked about time management. Right. So if we're to own where you are when it comes to time management, how clear are you about how you're spending your time each and every day and each and every week? And if we broke that down into percentages of client time and marketing time and admin time, how accurate would that be based on what you quote unquote think is really going on? Right. And so it's about giving yourself a very honest self-assessment of what's working and what's not, and finding ways to ground that in data that's going to help make some more informed decisions. Those would be a couple of things.
Okay. So just taking a step back, looking at what it is that you're doing, the results that you're getting from that. How many clients or customers you have. Is that what you want? And if it's not, what, I guess, then you start looking at what changes need to be made based on owning where you are, and just realizing the truth of it, right? Because people might not like looking at where they actually are. It might upset them or frustrate them, but this is the situation that I'm in. If they're having this conversation, it's probably not working. This is the situation I'm in. These are all the things that are going on. Something needs to change. So what of these things do I need to work on?
Right. It'd be like if I sat down tonight and I ate a container of Ben and Jerry's New York Super Fudge Chunk ice cream, okay, and I ate that right before I went to bed. That's a big mistake anyway. And then I wake up in the morning and I stand on the scale and I'm like, I bet I lost 1.5 pounds yesterday. It's not going to happen. Right. I mean, it's we lie to ourselves first. Right. I'm going to steal one of my husband's lines. Right. And he's like, he has this phrase, we lie to ourselves first. Right. Yeah, I can have the ice cream. That's fine. But if I'm thinking I'm losing 2 pounds in the next day, that's not realistic. Right. So, I mean, it's these kind of things where, like I'll give you another example. So sometimes when I work with clients who are, say, growing a side hustle, or they're building a different aspect of their business, and they're like, I need to work on the website. I'm like, okay, so what's the website going to look like? And we flesh out the content for the website, which is a few, like 4 pages, basically. It doesn't have to be a whole lot. And it'll be like weeks and months, and they'll be like, I'm still not done with the website. I'm like, what's going on? Well, I'm so busy. I'm tweaking this and tweaking that. I'm like, what's the purpose of the website? The purpose of the website is to get someone to look at it and give you a call. That's it. They send you an email. That's it. Right? It's never going to be perfect. Right. And so it's things like that where we can get bogged down, and some call it mind drama. Others may call it minutia, whatever it is. But we can get sidetracked and bogged down in things that we think are important that at the end of the day, maybe really aren't. And so that's just pulling us away from other things where we can be devoting time and attention to. I know for me, when I first started out, I worried so much about all the admin stuff with the business. And I was like, it's got to be this. It's got to be that. It's got to be this. And my coach would be like, how many people did you talk to this week? I was like, well, I was tied down with this. He goes, John, if you don't talk to people, you don't have a business, right? You're not going to make any money if you're not out there meeting people and making offers to help them, right? It's those kind of things where we can think one thing because of how we view the situation, but in the data and reality of it all, it may be something completely different. And that's why taking ownership or stock of where you're at is really important in that process.
Yeah. And I'm glad I asked that question, because you need to take ownership before you do anything else. Otherwise, anything that you do, it's probably not going to work, because you need to look at where you actually are. And that's a hard question, like you said, for people to answer. And I wanted to mention what Marvin Powell said, but I thought of another question I wanted to ask you. Remind me, John, if I forget about it, about, because you mentioned, asking people questions where, they're going to give you an honest answer. So a lot of the time, some of us probably feel like we can't get an honest answer from people. But anyway, I just didn't want to forget that. So Marvin Powell said, ownership sounds to me like being really mindful about everything in your business and life.
Yeah.
That's right, John Neral Coaching.
Yes, absolutely. And not only about being really mindful, but also about being really honest about what you're seeing and what's there. That's such a key point to really owning where you are, is that you've got to be truthful. You've got to be honest with yourself in things. I know from bowling, just to give you another example, I'd go out and compete in a professional event, and I'd miss caching. We cash a third of the field, right? And I'd miss caching by, 20 pins. And I'd be talking with a friend of mine or my coach, and I'd be like, oh gosh, if I only threw a strike in the ninth and 10th, I would have gotten a check. And we bowl an 8-game qualifier. And so the question comes back to is, how many single pin spares did you miss? All right, I missed 3 in the event. Great. That would have been 33 pins. You would have had a check easy. It's not about the strikes. It's about the spares that you missed. Right. So I can tell myself one story, and I can choose to believe that story if I want. But the truth is, there might be something else going on. And that's Marvin, I think one of the things you may agree with me on is that's where having a coach can be really helpful in us asking the right questions to help them uncover where they're at and then help move them forward from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's really hard. Obviously I'm a small business owner, and as a small business owner, you do everything yourself, at least for a while, until you get smart enough to start other people to do things, and have the money to do that. But yeah, it's hard. And then you get so bogged down in everything that it's hard to take a step back and examine that and own where you are, because to own where you are, you have to actually know where you are. And when so many things are going on all the time, it's hard. And then, for me personally, sometimes it's hard for me to think of a person that I can ask a serious question to, whether, it's business or personal, but mostly business, where I'm going to get their honest answer, because I don't want the answer that you think I want to hear. I don't want, how's that going to help me? Right. Mm-hmm. So how do we bring those people, into our lives, the people that, professionally or personally, either one? How do we find those people that we can trust, that are going to give us the straight answers to help us own where we are?
Yeah. I mean, trust is something I believe happens over time, right? I mean, trust is something that we may initially give to somebody, but they have to earn it. They have to prove themselves with it, right? And so after interaction, we then get to know who we can trust, right? It's why we have spouses, because we trust them, right? And we love them. And there are people at work whom we know we can trust because they've earned that. They've proven that to us. And so once you find that person whom you can trust, then it's about opening up the conversation and asking them if they will give you the honest feedback because you trust them. And feedback doesn't have to be hard. We just have to know how to give it and receive it. Right? And then when we get it, what do we want to do with it? Right? And so it's those kind of things where we look for the critical friend. We look for the mentor. We look for the coach. We look for the person who truly has our best interest at heart, but is also not going to shy away from giving us the feedback or asking the questions that need to be asked in order to help move them forward. Right. And that's where we have to decide where the fit is. I know a lot of times when I'm talking to people and they're interested in coaching, or they're trying to figure out if coaching's the right thing for them, I say to them, look, it's 3 F's. It's about fit. Do you think we fit? Do you think we would work well together? And I have to weigh in on that too. Mm-hmm. There have been people who have said, I want to work with you. I'm like, we're not the right match, but I know someone who's going to be a great coach for you if you're interested, right? We have to be really honest about what the fit looks like and whether or not we could do some work together. And then it's about function, right? The function is, does my program and services line up for what you're looking for, right? Whether it's executive or career transition coaching, is the program that I have for you what you're looking for? And then the last piece is finance, right? Because we have to talk about money because we're business owners, right? And so you find the people with whom you fit, right? And that's where coming to that place of, do I trust them? That's where we we take the leap and we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. And Marvin added a comment. He said, "You are right. It's all about the right questions."
Yeah, and the comment he put in there before that, he said, "I find it difficult to help people how to stand in their own truth comfortably sometimes." Yeah, and I get that, and I hear you on that, because it can, as coaches, we coach the energy, right? Not the situations. And we try to find the right questions. And sometimes those questions can be uncomfortable. They can be difficult. But we ask them because we come from this place with intention that it's going to help move our clients forward. Right. And I know, like you, I mean, we make agreements about, I may ask you a question, you don't have to answer it. Right. I can ask you a question, like, John, I'm not answering that. Great. I'll ask you another question, because I got a ton of them. Right. And we're going to go through that in our coaching session. So it's those kind of things. And I can appreciate that, because sometimes, we always want to help our clients so much. We just have to find the right questions to help them with that.
Mm-hmm. And I actually think that, I mean, that translates to anything you do in your business, because for example, in my business, I'm much better at this now than I was 6 years ago when I opened started doing this. The right questions are very important, because I would know what information I wanted, but I wouldn't ask the question the right way. So I wouldn't get the right answer. So now I know the question to ask, and I save, 20, 30 minutes of a conversation. Yeah. And if you're not answering no, that's not what I asked. So I know that's just kind of a trivial little example, but it is about asking the right questions, because if you have an answer, if I am looking for an answer to whatever it is, I need to ask the person the correct question. If I don't ask the question the right way or the right question, I'm not going to get it. And how's that going to help me? It's not going to help me, and it's not going to help them.
Right.
Right.
Right. And when we think about our businesses, we have to acknowledge, especially when we think about our personal and professional brands here for a moment, but that we have our businesses because we have demonstrated some kind of expertise, right? We're experts in our field, right? We're not the only expert, but we're experts in our field. And if I happen to get a speeding ticket tomorrow, Gene, I'm going to call you up, right? I'm going to call you up because I'm like, hey, what do I need to do here, kind of a thing, right? Or if I needed legal counsel because I know you, and you and I have built this, business relationship / friendship over the past couple of months, I pick up the phone and give you a call, right? I mean, that's part of the thing about how we exercise our expertise. Mm-hmm. I like to say how we use our genius, but it's how we get to show up in the work that we do. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we're coming from a place of service, so we can help the people who really need our help.
Yeah.
Or we help the people who really need our help. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And John, if you did call me and said you got a speeding ticket, I'm going to say, John, you should have read my book.
Yes, exactly. I got a speeding ticket one time leaving work past the Pentagon, right? Which of course you're like, John, why? And I was just so angry at something that happened at work. This was years ago when I was working my 9 to 5. And the motorcycle cop pulled me over. And he walks up to the car and he, gives me his name and his badge number. And he goes, do you know how fast you were going? And I looked right at him and I go, honestly, no. And here's the thing. I could give you some story about how I had a really, really bad day at work and I'm angry at my coworkers and my boss screwed me over. And you really don't care or want to hear that. So I'm sorry. What do you need? He's like, license and registration. And I got my ticket and I went to court and all that kind of stuff. But it was just like, yeah, had I known you back then.
Well, in the future.
Yes. Well, hopefully I don't need you for that stuff. Yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting time. So I did go in the next day, and when I talked to my VP, and she's like, did you have a good night? because she knew how stressful my day was. And I said, I want to know, can I expense a speeding ticket to the company? She goes, what did you do? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to have to flex time in a couple of weeks to go to court. So, yeah.
You are not the only person that has said they're trying to try to write it off. I kid you not. I'm not even going to say go ahead and jest, but
Right.
no, I don't think you can write off.
No, you can't. I was clearly just joking with her, but
I know you were, but the other person was not that I talked to. So
it's too funny.
Sarah, I'm not going to talk about any issues I may or may not have had getting pulled over. Mm-hmm. Is the energy more difficult now that it's online?
It's always different. It's such a great question, Sarah. It is a little bit different, but I, obviously you're not sitting next to each other, so you're missing that component. But really, after a while, the screen just goes away, and we're just having a conversation. I mean, Jean, honestly, very much like what's happened with you and me today. I mean, we just started on a conversation and kept it going, and the next thing you know, we're after 5 o'clock here and having a really good time, right? Yeah, but I mean, but that's what happens. You forget about the screen and you focus in on the conversation. So to your question, Sarah, it's a little bit of yes and a little bit of no.
Yeah, and I would kind of agree with that. I don't know how to explain it. Obviously, I prefer in person, but this is so much better than just, to me, talking over the phone or. Oh, what are you laughing at? Am I behind?
I'm sorry. He said it's a traffic ticket. Really, just another marketing expense.
Marvin, explain. In what way? In what way is that a marketing expense? Because you're gonna tell the officer. This has gone down a weird rabbit hole. You're gonna tell the officer what you were doing for work and then you're gonna tell the whole courtroom when you go to fight the ticket. Marvin, I'm curious.
Marvin, I just put it under gifts. Gifts.
Or tax advice about any of this stuff. We're supposed to. A traffic ticket is not a marketing expense.
Oh, that makes my day. Thank you. I was trying to get to my client meeting. Yeah, absolutely. That's too funny.
Be a little bit better about that, I think.
All right.
But anyway,
we've had our frivolity. Okay, yeah.
Oh no, I expect more frivolity to come. Marvin said, serious question. Mm-hmm. Well, this was before the speeding ticket marketing fiasco. The serious questions, even when we are just trying to help, can sometimes seem intimidating, interrogating, or intrusive. How do you avoid the conflict here? That's a really good question.
Yeah, I like that question a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, Marvin, thank you so much for sticking with us for the over.
Yeah, no, thanks. So Marvin, first, I love that question, right? So
which question? The marketing question?
No. That, serious questions when trying to help can sometimes seem intimidating, interrogating, or intrusive. How do you avoid the conflict here? So Marvin, what I do, just, so I set, so part of how I show up, and I'll set ground rules with my clients at the start. And I just set a ground rule to them that I will ask you a question because I believe that's where the conversation needs to go based on what you're telling me. I will coach around the energy and not the drama, right? So in asking that, and in setting that kind of ground rule, frees me up as their coach to simply say, I have this agreement with them that whatever question I'm going to ask them is genuinely coming from a good place with best intentions to help them. And that's what we agree upon. And I always make sure that my client knows they always have an out. If I ask them a question and they don't want to answer it, they don't have to, right? Or they'll say, I don't want to talk about this right now. And that is their choice as the client, as I hold their agenda. So for me, it's just a way for me to use the term play, but for me to really play with the client in that, we're going to have the conversations we're going to have, and I'm going to ask you the questions that I think need to be answered, but you never have to answer them if you don't want to. That's ultimately your choice. And so that just shifts my mindset, in that I don't sit there and go, how's it going to be received, or I'm going to worry about this or whatever, because I already have permission. And so having permission just allows me to move forward in that.
Well, Marvin, that's actually that's a good question, and I just have a comment. I'm not a coach, but I have a comment about that, if I may.
Yeah.
I totally understand, John, what you're saying about, setting ground rules, and if they don't want to answer the question, that's fine. But we talked, an hour ago or 40, a long time ago in this conversation about how you need to own where you are, and you need the hard questions answered. And I think I'm the one who mentioned it, actually, that you need somebody who's going to tell you the truth, because if they tell you just what you want to hear, you're not going to make any progress. So if somebody, and this is really back to your 3 steps. One thing that I need to work on is being concise and asking better questions, and my interview skills, because I just keep talking and remember what I wanted to say. So going outside their comfort zone and pivoting, right? Because nobody wants to hear bad things about themselves, or something that they might think is bad or negative, but you need to hear those things, and you need people that you trust, that have your best interest at heart, like you said, who are going to tell you those things in order to help you. So I think people, it's probably important to get out of your comfort zone, because nobody likes to hear it. As experienced as you are doing it, and as thick of a skin you have, nobody likes that, right?
No.
So we have to be able to get out of our comfort zone, because that's not going to be comfortable, or else we're never going to improve. And I mean, that's something that's definitely hard for me too. I mean, I don't like hearing it, but when I ask Marvin, when I ask you questions, John, when I ask you questions, Sarah, when I inevitably one day ask you questions, I want to hear what you have to say, because otherwise it's just a waste of both of our time. Right. Yeah, that was just my opinion, like getting outside your comfort zone and pivoting in order to get to where you want to be, and owning where you are. Look at this. I'm giving like a review.
Yes. Yeah. You're spot on. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So Marvin, John, anybody else watching, feel free to tell me the straight talk. Tell me how it is.
Marvin, there's another, I don't know if I had shared this other book with you previously, but and I reference it in mine. It's called How to Say Anything to Anyone by Sherry Harley. It's Harley like the motorcycle, and then Sherry, Shari. And what I love about her book is she's got an 8-step protocol in there for giving feedback. And it's a 2-minute protocol, which is great. And I've used it, and it works flawlessly, which is great. But she says that whenever we give feedback, we're giving feedback for one of 2 reasons. It's either 1, to maintain behavior, or 2, to shift behavior. And if we're giving feedback for any other reason, we need to check our personal agenda and find out why we're really giving it. So in a workplace situation, or let's say you hire a consultant for your business and they're there to give you feedback, it's really only about 1 or 2 things. It's either maintaining the behavior, great job, keep it up, keep going, good stuff, or it's to shift the behavior. This isn't working, you need to do this, right? And when I read that years ago, it was so simple, but it was so powerful. Right. And that as I built relationships, as I was repairing and building teams throughout my career, was that, if I'm giving feedback for one of those 2 reasons, and only one of those 2 reasons, I'm not going to go wrong. Right. And of course, we can't give feedback unless we trust and we're trusted. Right. If we think about a boss or a supervisor or a colleague who gave us feedback that we didn't trust them, we just automatically dismiss the feedback as garbage because I'm not listening to that. Mm-hmm. Right. But if we trust them, and that feedback is either to maintain behavior or shift behavior, then we've got something we can do with it. And again, it comes back to not only where we own where we are, but tying back into what we were talking about today. Feedback that shifts behavior also helps us pivot.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what pivoting is. Pivoting is changing. Yeah. Well, I don't know the dictionary definition of it, but it's just taking what you're doing and doing it differently.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really interesting. Now, John, I don't think you mentioned that to me before, because I would have remembered that the feedback is either to maintain the status quo or to encourage change. Yeah, to shift.
Yeah, it's a great book, and I keep it close by. And like I said, I reference part of it in mine too, just because I just think so highly of it. So, and the nice thing is, it's an easy read. It's one of those books you can pick up and spend an afternoon with and get a whole lot out of it. Mm-hmm. And she's got a great website and a YouTube channel that's got some interesting videos there and stuff like that. So that's good.
And I remember the name now too, because you mentioned Harley like the motorcycle.
Yes. Good way to remember it.
Yeah. Well, something that I just wanted to throw out there when this isn't, well, it's kind of about pivoting. When all of this started, I was on the bandwagon of wanting to learn something new during the whole shutdown, like either, a language or learn to play an instrument. I was going to order something from Amazon and learn on YouTube. And, what can I do at home? Baking and all that stuff. I baked a few things. I cooked a few things. But I had these set ideas in my mind of things that I wanted to do, and it didn't happen. I don't even know why. No explanation for it. But there were two other things that I did that you would not think I would have done during the shutdown. And one of them was public speaking. I joined Toastmasters, and they are meeting, virtually over Zoom. And the reason why I thought about that is you were talking about feedback, and in Toastmasters, so it's working on your communication and leadership skills and public speaking. But the feedback, every time in Toastmasters you give a speech or presentation or basically do anything, you get feedback. And there are actually specific ways that Toastmasters teaches you to give feedback to other people so that it's effective. And that just came to mind when you were talking about that, because it's very important. Like, if you don't give feedback the right way, if it's too negative, or just the way that you phrase it, right? The other person's not going to take it well. They could take offense. They could feel badly about themselves. Or if you don't give it the right way or don't give them appropriate feedback, they can't improve. Because one time I gave a speech and I didn't get any negative feedback, and I'm like, well, that can't be true. There must be something I did. Like, I knew, like, there is something, like, give me something to work on. So I came out of that one more not as happy with that speech as the other speech I did, where I got a lot of negative feedback, because I'm like, all right, I got to work on all these things. You know what I mean? Like, it just made me think about that, like the appropriate feedback and the purpose of it. The purpose of the feedback is, yes, tell me what I'm doing right, so I don't feel badly about myself. And then also, what do I need to work on? Because I'm here for a reason. I paid money. I'm spending my time. I'm learning these things. And I want the answers. So the feedback is very. I just wanted to throw that in there, because that's what I thought of.
It's such a good reference point and analogy there. I mean, as you were talking all that too, like it got me thinking about how employees go through their annual appraisal, right? And they do it for compliance, and they need their rating and all that kind of stuff. And the person who's your hypo, your high performer, who's doing really, really well, and they get a 5 out of 5. They still want feedback, right? Like, everybody loves to be told they're doing a really good job, but they also want feedback. They want to know where they should stretch, or they should grow, or what they need to be working on, right? Like, you could actually get a 5 and be told, I'd still like to see you work on this. Mm-hmm. But again, it comes back to, if you don't trust where the feedback is coming from, or if you don't trust the group that is giving you the feedback, right? It's not going to move you, right? And that's, I mean, it's one of the great things about Toastmasters is that, everybody is there for a common purpose, right? They're there to be better public speakers, right? So everybody's in that boat, and it's a lot of trust, especially in a room full of strangers, where you get to be vulnerable and then get the feedback after you've delivered your speech. It's not easy.
No, it's not. It's not. But that's one way to get outside your comfort zone. I like public speaking. I know people probably think I'm crazy. I don't think I'm that good at it, but I like it.
Yeah. And public speaking is one of the most stressful things that people do in their lives.
Yeah, I heard there was a Seinfeld episode years and years ago. You know how in the beginning of it, sometimes it started with Jerry doing his stand-up in the club. He was, I don't remember which episode it was, but he said that people's number one fear in life is public speaking, and number 2 is death. Death is number 2, he said.
Nice.
So do you think doing things like this helps with public speaking? Because we're in front of, God knows how many people on Facebook doing this right now. So would you say that this is like somewhat equivalent to speaking in front of a crowd of people, or is it totally different? I mean, because this is a pivot, but.
So it's definitely, so not only will I say, is this a form of public speaking, but it is a medium that I have to say, like, our younger generation is really good at it. Like, they turn a camera on, whether they're doing a Facebook Live, Instagram Live, and they just start talking, and they're so good at it. And it is absolutely a form of public speaking. I mean, typically when we've said public speaking in the past, it has been you stand up on a dais at the lectern and you deliver your speech, and that's it. But as we've progressed, public speaking has taken on so many different forms. And I'll tell you a really interesting story. So I used to do consulting work for a educational technology company. I won't name them, but it was an educational technology company. And at the time, we had hired a fairly well-known actress to deliver a keynote presentation to 1,600 people. And we were shocked to learn, like, right before, about like a couple weeks before she was to give this speech, that the largest audience she had ever spoken to was 150 people. And here we were putting up on a stage in front of 1,600 people to a room full of educators that weren't necessarily the kindest audience for what she was going to talk about. And she got nervous. And like in the middle of it all was like the PowerPoint went wonky and she kind of went off on her own tangent and everything. But we had all kind of made this assumption that because she was this actress who had been on a very well-known TV show, that she'd be great in front of a live room. And she suffered the same kind of stressors that you or I would on some level, right? And so that's what I mean. Like, this absolutely is a form of public speaking. It's one form. Standing up in front of a room full of people and delivering a speech, that's another, right? And so it's all of these different kind of things. And that's where COVID has just, really kind of put us in front of this camera and in front of this screen and be like, let's have a conversation and talk, because that's what public speaking is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have spoken to anybody. I've done so many presentations. I can't even count anymore. But I never would have been able to do that if they were all live. There's just no way with my like in person. With my schedule, that never would have worked. Yeah. So I mean, in a way, it's good because I had the opportunities to do it. But yeah, you're right. It's not the same. But better than nothing.
But well, actually, it's a lot better than nothing, because anytime we get chance to turn the camera on and speak, we just get to deliver our message, right? And there's somebody out there that gets to hear it. And if it resonates with them and connects with them, we get a like, we get a follow, we get a conversation with somebody. And I mean, there are times when, as I'm starting to do a little bit more with Instagram and IGTV and Instagram Live, I'll turn on to do a 4 or 5 minute live and nobody joins, right? But I don't delete it. I don't delete it because somebody will catch it afterward. Mm-hmm. Right. And so it's still an opportunity for me to turn the phone on and have a conversation with people. Right. Mm-hmm. And right now, video is so huge, whether it be on LinkedIn or Instagram. But video is a way that people are consuming content because they don't have to read it. They get mm-hmm. to watch it. They get to listen to it, anything like that. And it's just a way where here we are in 2020 amid COVID, people are consuming a lot of content, and video has been the preferred modality in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that too. A lot of people will just scroll through posts that's just writing, but they'll click on videos, or and then also the captions on the videos. A lot of people I've heard watch videos without sound. That's why the captions are so big. Because when you think they're paying attention to you or whatever, they're watching videos.
Right. Right. Or they're lying awake at 2:30 in the morning during a horrendous thunderstorm like we had the other night, and you don't want to turn the sound up to wake up your spouse next to you, so you just read the captions that are on the screen. I mean, who knows when we consume content, but
yeah,
how we do it.
Or sometimes they don't turn the volume off and wake you up, but that's it.
And then they must pay.
What is that? What are you watching? And at the oddest moments too.
What's that?
And at the oddest moments too. I'll just be sitting here working. I'll hear this odd sound, like screaming coming from a video in the other room, and it's just some silly video.
Yeah. Yeah. We like those. It helps us detach. Yeah,
that's true. Marvin pointed something out I just wanted to get to, because I don't know if this is beyond my out of my wheelhouse. Marvin said, "You hit a sore spot, John. I can't stand when leaders believe that performance management and performance administration get confused." Can you maybe explain that to some of the people watching who might have to deal with that?
Yeah, Marvin, it's like you take the finger and stick it right in the wound, right? Like, yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, what I've seen, both in working with my clients, but also throughout my career, is that performance management, that end of the year appraisal, is that compliance, check the box, HR wants us to do it. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't have any credence unless you're at risk of getting fired. So how many times have we heard people just say, "Oh, I've got my performance review, that this is a wasted hour. I'm never going to get back out of my life." Right. And so that, whenever I hear that, I always get really curious about the organizational culture and the organizational climate. I want to get curious about the relationship the person has with their supers and find out, what's going on there, because fair enough to say, we will have a really bad manager at some point in time in our lives, and maybe more than once. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, in the performance conversation, what I would say to that is, performance conversations need to be intentional. They need to be meaningful. There needs to be a result that comes out of that conversation that is actionable, that is something that the supervisor, the boss, and the employee truly partner with, because they're both invested in their performance, right? It's not like, hey, you need to work on these 3 things and I'll check in with you next year and see if you did them, right? That's pointless. There's no reason for that at all. So in the performance conversations, it has to be, in my opinion, it has to be that meaningful, intentional partnership that's created at the end of it, because, I'm not checking the box here. If I truly care about you as somebody who's on my team, your success is important to me. And yeah, I might be busy and I might be overwhelmed, but if I'm tasked with leading people or managing people, then I need to honor that. And we need to find a way to really partner in that, because your success is important just as much as mine is.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, the time should be I love that. The time should be the most exciting time for everyone. Yeah. Right? Like it's like when I say to people who are interested in coaching, it's like, you get an hour to focus solely on you, right? That you get to talk only about you and what's important to you for that hour, and you're going to get some action steps at the end of it that's going to bridge until we talk next time, right? And we have another session. And it's about making that time meaningful. It shouldn't be something you loathe, right? And just be like, all right, I gotta go through the motions, and things like that. One of the things that I learned later in my career, because with age comes either wisdom or sass. I'm not sure which. But I would always turn that performance appraisal meeting around, and I would keep the focus on me, but I'd be like, so what do you think I should do about this? What do you think I should do about that? What if I did this? Right? Because if they're coming like, well, you did a good job in this, I need you to work on that. Great. So I still got 50 minutes. So we're going to still have this conversation. And I remember one boss saying to me, they were like, I know you look forward to your performance conversation. I don't. And I took that as a compliment. I thought that was really nice. So, it's those kind of things. It has to be it really, in order for it to be effective, it's got to be a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I'm really glad that we talked about it, because I didn't think about it that way. In order for it to be effective, it has to be a partnership. Like I didn't think about, in your job with a performance review. But yeah, I mean, everything that you were saying applies to so many different aspects of your life.
Yeah. Like when there have been times in my career where I've had employees go on performance improvement plans, and first of all, it should never be a shock, right? If we're getting to a point where we are having to talk about your performance again, and we need to put you on a PIP, this conversation shouldn't be a surprise. That's the first thing. But I've sat with my employee and I've said, this can go one of two ways. The performance improvement plan is designed to improve your performance. So we've got these things written out here, and I as your supervisor am going to follow through on these things. You have to decide whether you want to follow through with them or not. And based on your actions is going to determine whether you come off of the performance plan or you get terminated. I'm going to do everything I can to help you improve your performance. I just need to know what you're going to do. And there have been times where it led to a termination. And there have been times where they came off of their performance improvement plan and got promoted a couple years down the road. So again, it comes back to, even in a situation like that, there's the opportunity to pivot. Mm-hmm. We put a PIP in place for you to pivot and improve your performance. And if you don't want to, that's fine. If you're like, you know what, I know the clock's ticking and I'm going to find myself another job and leave, that's fine too, right? You're going to make the best decision for yourself in this moment. But for me and how I'm going to show up, here's the ground rules. Here's what we're going to do. you either play or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of things.
Marvin said, we all want to do meaningful things, feel significant, and make a real contribution. Our leaders should be tasked with this responsibility.
Yeah. And I'll read that article and share it, Marvin. Absolutely. I like that. How to fall in love with your PIP. Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, can you tell us what PIP stands for?
Oh, Professional Improvement Plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Or sometimes people call it, so it's Professional Improvement Plan. I've heard Personal Improvement Plan, but in the workplace that gets convoluted in my opinion. So it's typically Professional Improvement Plan.
I like that. And I'm going to read that article too, Marvin. You better get cracking.
another, to go with what your two articles you were writing for LinkedIn earlier today. So got another one coming.
Marvin gives me homework, so this time I'm giving Marvin homework. You have to get that article done, and I want to read it this week because I want to fall in love with my professional improvement. I need the article so I know.
You need the article so you know, right? More alphabet soup.
And I need to own where I am at so that I can create a professional improvement plan.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I've also heard performance improvement.
Yeah, performance improvement too, yeah.
Marvin, you, I, and John should just go on a live sometime.
We should. We absolutely should. That would be fun. That would be fun.
This is the longest live I have done, and I think I laughed the most during this.
I know, right? We should do it as a chamber event, get Jennifer to moderate.
Oh,
and then we'll just, we'll put more work on Jennifer's plate, poor thing.
Russ to come too. Like, I don't know where that's going to go.
Say again?
We'll be on 5 hours. I said, if we ask Russ to come too. But one of these days, I have time to come up with any new crazy ideas, but one day, you mark my words, guys, we will come up with something.
So I say we market it as a lunch and learn with Gene, Marvin, John, and Russ, ... and heat up your dinner around 6 o'clock.
Exactly. So you bite and then you put it down because you are laughing so much, or because you're in a restaurant and have to put your mask on. I don't know.
Right, yeah,
and Marvin said, let's do it. We'll enjoy it if no one else does. Yes,
yeah,
we will.
Absolutely. That's it.
Watching, but Marvin, you need to tell Jennifer too. She's roped into this.
That's right.
Jennifer has been on my live a couple of weeks ago. You were on today. Marvin is going to be doing a webinar next week.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Need to talk about that. So so we'll all have experience talking with. Well, you'll all have experience talking with me. So that's gonna be a riot.
Well, so one of the exciting things that I had set a goal for this year, which is happening, is that I wanted to launch a podcast. And I actually have interviewed Jennifer. Her podcast episode will drop next week, but the podcast is called Show Up 2020. And the purpose of the podcast is talk to everyday people who are doing extraordinary things because of the way they show up. And I thought Jennifer, with all the work that she's been doing for us with the chamber and her tireless efforts, she was a great guest to have on the show, and she knocked it out of the park. So looking forward to sharing that with everybody.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to listening to that episode. Yeah, the live that I did with Jennifer a few weeks ago was very entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I caught part of that. It was definitely good. Yeah, absolutely.
So for any, I don't think anybody watching is new to my lives, but this was definitely an example of me pivoting during the whole shutdown. And Marvin is the one who convinced me to do my first live.
Nice.
I was so nervous and it was so bad. And I hate the sound of my voice and I hate seeing myself on camera. I hate it. But the more I do it, I like it. And I have fun doing it. So one thing about pivoting is you never know what new things you're going to enjoy, or you might learn that you hate something.
Right.
But you can try it to know it. So, and then also, John, I was going to start a podcast in 2020, and that has not happened yet at all.
Well, if you want some tips or some help, I'm happy to share.
I need to listen to your podcast.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. But so I intended on doing the podcast, but then when COVID hit in early 2020, I started doing this. So this could, right? Like we could turn these into podcasts.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Without a doubt. Yeah.
Ooh, we have been going for over an hour and a half. John said to me earlier, is there any question that you ask or a sign that we need to cut it off? But I didn't even feel like I needed to. And now I see the time is an hour and 34 minutes. So I think we probably need to go.
Yeah.
But anyway, John, this is your time. So is there anything else you want to leave everybody with about pivoting and your book? Mention your book too. We'll put that in the comments.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I'll keep this short. So, basically how we show up matters. How we show up is the way we connect with people. We build business relationships. We build our personal relationships. And whether it's, you think about those show up 6 strategies, or you think about what showing up just means for you, how we show up matters. And right now, amidst everything that is happening in with COVID, what we're seeing in our country and the world right now, we are all being called to show up. It doesn't have to be in some magnanimous way. It is just a very simple call that, we get to decide how we choose to show up, and what it means for us to set the ground rules and have the intentional conversations, to own where we are and welcome the new opportunities, and most importantly, to use our genius and to protect and promote our brand. So I will leave you with that. I want to thank you so much. If anybody who's listening to this wants to check out my website, it's johnneral.com. My book on Amazon is Show Up: 6 Strategies to Lead a More Energetic and Impactful Career. Would love for you to check it out, and please rate and review it. That would be most helpful. And Jean, thanks so much for making my afternoon. This was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the chance to spend some time with you today, and everybody who watched. So Marvin and Sarah, thank you both so much, and anybody else, thanks again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had such a good time. I was laughing so hard, my eye makeup is running. So yeah, you guys can see, because I know it didn't look like that in the beginning. So John, thank you.
Had a good time.
You made my afternoon too. Thank you so much for coming on. You gave us so much good information, and you saw how engaged everybody was, especially Marvin. And I know anybody that goes back to watch the replay of this will get so much good information and some entertainment as well. So John, thank you so much for being on. And I look forward to seeing you throughout the rest of our virtual book tours in 2020.
You got it. Absolutely. I'll see you soon.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks again. Thanks, everybody.